All right, welcome and good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to join our Rainwater Harvesting in Action workshop, part of the Western Water Resilience Workshop series that we began last fall. I'm Ashley Rude, co-director of the Dry Farming Institute. Over the past 2 decades, I've worked at the intersection of conservation and agriculture, starting in the deserts of my home state of Arizona, moving through California, and now here in Oregon, where I live and work across the Northwest. So I'm really excited you're all here from all of those places where I've lived. I know how full your schedules are, and our goal today is to make the most of your time. We've got folks in the Zoom room from across Oregon, California, and Washington, both producers and technical service providers, loving seeing people's introductions coming into the chat. People are working here from rural and urban communities. Some of you think about water challenges every day, and others only occasionally. Some of you have decades of experience, others are just starting out. We'll do a quick interactive exercise in a minute, just to see better who's in the room. But I just want to start by saying this space is for all of us. When I was preparing for today, I was thinking back to last fall when we launched the series, just a couple of days after the federal election. I talked in that opening about how clearly those moments are built to divide us, drawing hard lines, but that our day-to-day realities are much more nuanced. What I didn't know back then was just how unpredictable and fast the first 100 days of this new administration would feel. And no matter where we each stand politically, I think we can agree. It's been a challenging season for those of us working to support farmers and ranchers, and even harder for those farmers and ranchers themselves. The ripple effects of the federal funding cuts, including for this very project, have touched people and programs that we care really deeply about. I want to acknowledge this, whether that impact has felt personal, professional, or has felt through your community, you're not alone. That's part of why we're here today, to connect, to learn from one another, and strengthen the work we all care about. As we begin, I hope we can approach this space with curiosity and respect. Let's share from our own experiences, set assumptions aside, and really listen to one another. In that spirit, this workshop came directly from your feedback. Attendees from last year told us that they wanted more farmer stories and more about rainwater harvesting. So here we are. I'm really thrilled to be joined by 2 farmers that I learn from every time we talk, Michelle Week from Good Rain Farm and Nate Johnson from Sunbow Produce. This series is a collaborative effort made possible by a great team across the bioregion. A huge thanks to our planning team. And Teal, I don't know if you're in that document where I've got the name of the planning team members, but if you could drop that list, or I will in a moment, that would be great. And thank you to our broader collaborators at American Farmland Trust, the Northwest Climate Hub, and Oregon State University. We're going to begin with a few minutes of connection, first as a full group, and then in small breakout rooms of 2 to 3 people, because I really feel like even in Zoom, it's important to build community. After that, we'll hear from Nate and Michelle about their experiences developing rainwater systems on their farms. Their conversation is going to be shaped by the questions many of you submitted at registration. We'll also have time for Q&A, and if you're able, we'd love for you to come off mute and ask your questions live. We know there's a ton of knowledge in this room, especially given the different regulations in each state and the diversity of farms represented. So we want to hear what you've learned too. If we have some time at the end, we'll share an open document for collecting resources around rainwater catchment and other irrigation resources. And if you have events or tools you'd like to share at that point, you can too. We'll also ask you to fill out a short feedback form. And to thank you, we'll raffle off a couple of $25 Visa gift cards for filling out those evaluations. And some quick Zoom guidelines before we jump in. Please keep yourself muted while we're in this big room. During interactive times, keep your video on if you can. We know there might be background animals or kids or activity, and that's totally okay. Please use the chat for relevant discussion. We'll be keeping an eye on it. And please take care of yourself. There's no formal breaks. And let me try to mute folks. Sorry about that. And please use the chat for relevant discussion. We'll be keeping an eye on it. And again, there's no formal break. So take care of yourself, move, stretch as needed. Thank you so much for joining. With that, I'm going to pass it off to Teal, one of our planning team members, for us to get a sense for who's in the room. Thanks, Teal.
No problem. Yeah, we just thought it would be fun to see who actually showed up today. And so this is a Mentimeter platform.
Where's your plan? What's your
Let's
plan?
hold on one moment, Teal.
Yeah.
I think we got some mutes.
Got
If
it.
you notice yourself not on mute, please do mute. Sorry about that. Go
No
ahead.
problem. We just thought it'd be fun. We have, 72 people in the room today. So thought it'd be fun to see who's here. And if you've been with us before, we have been using Mentimeter, which is this anonymous live polling platform. So you can use your phone and use this QR code or go to the top of the screen. You'll see you can join in a browser window at menti.com, and there will be a field that you can put this number in. And I'm going to actually copy it so I can put that in the chat as well. So please join this. Oops, that's not the number. 2154-8822 if you want to copy that from the chat and put that in to your browser window, and you can show us where you're located. Got some folks from Nevada today, the full stretch from the Southern California to Northern Washington again. This is fun. I can see we have 29 people have participated already, so we'll just give a couple, another 10 seconds. Great. All right, we got 35 people to do this. Thanks for sharing. That's fun to see where you're coming from. I'm going to move. We have one more slide. Just curious to see what organization or institution, who do you work for? What do you work for? This also gives us a good sense of how our advertising is working and who's interested in our topic, so we can keep adjusting.
For what it's worth, I saw in our registration that we had 31 producers sign up, which is awesome. I don't know that they'll all be able to join, but that's been the most of any other session that we've had.
Great, we're back up to 35, so I'll just quickly say, looks like conservation districts are well represented here, and USDA, NRCS, yeah, and university. But yep, we've got a little bit of everything. It's not agencies. All right, thanks, that's all we have.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that, Neil, or Teal. So with that, we are gonna take people into small breakout rooms with just 1 to 2 other people. If you are not in a place where you want to be in a breakout room, you can opt to stay in this space. But again, we just want to try to build community in this space. So when you get into that room, we'll just ask that you introduce yourself to each other and share, what brought you to this workshop. And if you have a little bit of extra time, share a project that you're currently working on that you're really excited about. And with that, would you like to send folks into breakout rooms, Jolie? Are we ready? Great. We'll see you in about 10 minutes. Thank you all. Welcome back into this space. I hope you had a good conversation. I know sometimes technology can take a moment to sort everyone into those spaces. So I hope that you got to make a good connection. And if possible, put yourselves back on mute. If anyone wants to share back in the chat, a good conversation that they had or someone that they'd met, I'd love to hear it. That's the one bummer of being the facilitator. I don't get to meet everyone here and have those introductory conversations. But feel free to share what you've learned in the chat. We'll just give folks another moment to come on into the space. Let's see. Welcome back, everyone. I'm really excited now that we've had a chance to get to meet each other to hop into the presentations by our farmer presenters. We'll begin in a moment with Nate Johnson from Sunbow Produce. After that, we'll hear from Michelle Week from Good Rain Farm. You can put your questions in the chat. We're going to have a good chunk of time to have questions and answers. So you can put yourself in the chat, and then if possible and you feel comfortable, we'll take people off mute and let you ask your questions live. We want this to be somewhat conversational after they share their stories. Again, there's a huge wealth of information in this room that we would love for folks to share. And with that, I'm going to kick it off to Nate and see if you can share your screen. We'll figure that out together. And let me also ask my co-hosts, I'm trying to remember how to spotlight folks. If we can spotlight Nate, that would be great. Nate, your screen looks great from here. You are still on mute, however.
Got that now. Okay, so we're good?
We're great.
Okay. I'm going to start the clock here. It's important that I have one of these, a clock, because I can just run on. First, I want to thank everybody for coming today. And I want to thank the Dry Farming Institute and everyone involved for hosting this. I wish that this was available at the time when I was putting this system together, because it would have saved me some time, I think. And I'm hoping that that's what this helps everyone else out there who has to put a system together do. So my name is Nate Johnson. He, him is the pronouns. And I'm the co-owner of Sunbow Produce. My wife and I, we run a little organic veg and fruit operation in Philomath and Corvallis, Oregon. And we manage, we lease 2 different properties to run our farm. The one that I'm focusing on today is Sunbow. And I'll give you a quick background on the farm. The Sunbow was one of the first wave of the earliest organic farms that went in on the West Coast. Got established in 1972, which was when a lot of the organic movement was really germinal, and it was kind of lunatic fringe to even talk about organic at that time. And I have the great honor of taking the land on after one of those lunatics and learning that I am myself a lunatic for doing it, and hope to continue to be a lunatic as long as I'm alive. And got to come in here in 2013 and apprentice from Harry McCormick, who was one of the people who helped to establish the National Organic Plan, and one of the founders of Oregon Tilth. So I had a great mentor, and when I got here, I learned quite a bit about doing a lot with a little. Harry had already had some practices that way of being pretty conserving with water. But in 2020, we got to a spot where we realized that we weren't going to be able to use water for a little bit at Sunbow while we were formalizing some water rights. We have a water permit, but at the time I needed to go through the process with that. And so for that to happen, I needed to have another water source at Sunbow. And so we went to Rainwater for nursery stock initially, and a little bit of supplemental irrigation. And then we leased this other property that's not far from where we are that had full water rights, and we could take all the really thirsty crops that we grow over there. So here at Sunbow, we had to throw together a system in I had about 2 months to go from I know nothing about it really to I better have something that works. And I did that in February of that year. And I knew I had a couple months because the season was going to pick up. And then, as anybody who's a producer knows, once you hit about this time of year, April, I'm lucky to get anything else done that's a project or anything. I'm just in production mode. And so I put this together um, piece by piece, and I did a bunch of research, and I came up with some of these points um, that I pulled off of some of the resources that I've shared later in the presentation. First, I want to give you guys a chance to read this, but I just want to say quickly, you want to locate what you're doing close to the point of use. It's usually these systems, you're putting in something that's small output, and we have a submersible pump that we use, but you can be limited in what kind of pump pressure you've got and those kinds of considerations. So you really want to put this close to where you're going to use it so you can save on the energy it takes to push your water where you need it and to make sure that you can actually drive the water that you need where you need it. Saves you on all the other costs too. Just the extensiveness will cost you of like fittings and pipe and hose and all the rest of it. You want to ensure that the ground is flat and stable. For us, it was a flat piece of ground, already had gravel on it, and you'll see here in a minute the building. I'll describe it, but if you have especially ground that is a lot of clay, it's going to shrink, it's going to swell, things are going to move. You get a lot of weight in there. We have 2,500 gallon tanks.
Yeah.
But it looks really good though.
Yeah.
And so I think, in the end, you want to make sure that you're not sinking in. And you want to make sure that you're going to build this big enough to be worth the expense and the effort. And so some of that has to do with just knowing what you're going to use or get an idea of what you'd like to have to use. And then sort of like what I've learned with refrigeration, if you're going to be using refrigeration, you kind of want to build it bigger than you think you'll need at first if you can, and then plan to build it bigger. And I'm going to get to my next slide here. For some reason, there we go. This is the spot I want to show you. The pole barn is where the tanks are. And the lines that you can see are going out to the areas where I'll actually attach irrigation headers and then run drip tape or flow out from a hose into some of the other trays and stuff that we use for nursery stock. And so it's all very close. Those are 96-foot tunnels on the bottom, so it gives you a sense of scale. I'm not going very far from where the water is. And I've also located, like the shade house that we have is located right next to that pole barn. So I put my nursery stock in there, threw a shade cloth over it. Locating it like that lets me, and it's flat ground where I'm at. It's not on an angled slope or anything, but that lets me have a lot of flexibility. There's a lot of options there depending on what I'm doing when. Briefly, I'll just say that when I did the calculations on the calculator, it told me that this roof that I've got, which is about 50 by 30, is gonna pull in 21,000 gallons of water on an average year's rainfall. And I at the time was able to buy 2 tanks. I'd like to get a third, and I could fit it in this building, and so that's kind of a down the road thing I'm keeping my eye on. But the 5,000 gallons is tied together at the bottom, and it's been very, very useful to have. And so I'll refill and empty and refill at, if I'm using it throughout the wetter season, I can recharge quite a bit of water out of the rainfall that I'm going to get. And then I'm not going to get any water here in Philomath and Corvallis. Usually it starts to get iffy. Usually it starts to get iffy around May, but now it's in April. We haven't had rain in a while, and it's pretty dry and looks to be dry for a bit. So I turned off my tanks in April. Usually I would turn it off a little later, but because I want to hold on to some of the water I've got after having used it. And I want to hope to recharge some to take me into the summer so that I can use it on my seedlings in my garden bed. So I'm hoping for some rain coming up ahead, but I'm getting ground ready now in earnest. I'll leave this slide up for a minute just to let you get a sense of this, but you want to start off, I think, on the design end of it. You really want to get a sense of what the building is you're going to use to catch your water. Here in Oregon, you have to have a building, a structure that you're taking the water off of in order to store it legally like that. And so we happen to have this pole barn that was on the property, and I just cleaned it out and opened it up and made use of it. It's kind of our potting shed, and I store like potting mix to keep it out of the rain in the winter back there. But I had some extra space, so that's why I used it. And knowing what I had and knowing what kind of water I could catch helped me to understand that I was going to need to get more than just the one tank, and that actually I could probably get another tank to make it 7,500 gallons, and I would still be able to empty and fill it, empty those tanks twice and fill it up again. So I'm hoping to do that in the future. You want to think about what you're going to be using and like what the outlets are, the irrigation that you're going to be using. You want to really focus that water because it's going to go faster than you think. You don't want to be indiscriminate with it, and you want to be very miserly with it. And use your timers. And I thought I could get away with just setting a timer up maybe on my phone, and then when it went off while I was on the tractor, I was like, oh, I'll go back in there and I'll make sure that I turn it off after I get off the tractor. And sure enough, I did not do that, and I ended up losing in one evening. I ended up losing thousands of gallons of water a few years ago. So you want to make sure that you've got timers that are going to shut off your lines, and not just rely on your own memory or just kind of a manual system if you can. And then the other thing for design is you want to be thinking about like the height above your tanks. You want to make sure that you've got enough space above your tanks that from the point where you're dropping out of a gutter down to a collection pipe and then over into your tanks, you've got enough vertical space there to actually drop and have the water flow down into the tank. So you can see on these tanks here on this screen, you've got a line coming in at the left there. The big white pipe comes down to a screen that sits horizontally there, and it drops into the top of the tank. And I've tied the tanks together at the bottom there with a valve. If I wanted to segregate them, I could. I don't. I just keep it as one big tank. Makes it much less management for me, much easier for me to just treat it as one tank. And on the right-hand side, coming out the top, that black line, I've got a submersible pump that's suspended from that black tubing. And that siphon break there at the top sort of keeps you from having, leaving a line open on accident and then having some siphoning drain out your pipe. And I've got a valve that can shut off there, and then it goes off into my hose lines that I carry off into greenhouses or over into the propagation space that I've got. And the clean screen, you really want to get on top of checking your screens. The amount of debris and pollen and dirt and dust and all kinds of other stuff that collects in your gutters is surprising. And you want to have a good first flush system, which I'll show you later. And you also then want to have good clean screens, or you can have it where you'll get an algae or kind of a scum will build up on that filter. And then as you think you're catching rain, and you come out and you've got water flowing out the outside top of your tank and you're not catching it. And then there's a pipe just to the right of that arrow that is where my overflow leaves. So the tanks fill themselves and then they just empty out. It's self-managing there. And I've got it screened at the end so nothing's crawling in there and bugs aren't getting up in. I don't have mosquitoes coming out of that. That first flush system there is a little undersized, I think. We've learned. I'm going to put another one in, a kind of a double right after it. And so the water will pour into the pipes there from the gutters, and then it fills this vertical, and there's a ball that floats up to the top, closes it off. And that first flush is like all the really dirty water is dropping into there. And then at the bottom, you're just kind of slowly letting the water out of it. And then every so often you got to unscrew the whole unit and just dump all the garbage out of there. But for me, because the system's bigger than it should be for this one downpipe, I should get a second one put in. So that's on the list of when I get time. And then the other on this other side is a tank gauge. And it's a very simple system just on a float on a string. And I found it to be indispensable, much easier than the first few months when I didn't have one and I was trying to gauge what I had based on condensation on the outside or what I thought I could hear by tapping on the tank or something. So I think that's a must have if you're doing a design. Get yourself a tank gauge. This just describes a little bit what we do with the water. You know, we're transferring from a two-thirds horsepower submersible, and we were lucky to get that recently from a grant I got from the Oregon Community Food System Network and ORCAN. We got a disaster resilience grant, and one of those things that I got was this submersible, little bit bigger submersible here that works for me and puts out into these poly lines that I've got. And then I don't do a single filter because I'm using my headers. Once I stop using my rainwater, I start using my groundwater pumps, and so I have filters that are at the headers because I'm swapping in and out, and so I'd like to just have the catch-all be at the header instead of trying to remember, you know, what I'm running that has a filter and what doesn't and all that. And I just want to show you this year, we just got done turning off the tanks I was telling you because we got pretty dry here in April, but I ran until yesterday, the day before, in this greenhouse using the rainwater. And in the first photo from this March 24th, you can see I've got 6 drip lines hooked up, and then 3 beds planted, and then kept planting, of course, and then kept adding lines. And then you can see the growth I got and the way things are looking as of a few days ago in that greenhouse. And the peas are really happy, and got a shade cloth on there just yesterday. So now that it's getting warm enough, everything in there is going to be happier and will transpire less water. This is another thing I want to mention about the rainwater is it's kind of great to use it in conjunction with other practices to reduce evaporation. You want to sort of make it so your plants don't have to transpire as much water to begin with. And then this is our greenhouse. It's one of the first greenhouses on the farm, but it collapsed in an ice storm. And so we sort of, it was all crumpled down into about an M shape. And so we just uncrumpled it and then sort of supported it, knew it couldn't put a film over the top anymore. It just wouldn't support a plastic film. It was all jagged from metal breaking and whatnot, but we could put a shade cloth on there. And so we just repurposed it. And to the left of this frame, what you can't see, there's a bed space, protected bed space that is where we'll run a few beds of crops off the tanks. If I've got water that I feel I have excess or I can use, then I'll run, like last year I ran summer squash in there off of the drip. And these bottom watering trays, you can see, I acquired those from a hazelnut grower who was going out of business, and they're like made out of the same material as a surfboard. They're kind of a fiberglass reinforced, UV resistant. Anyway, I got them for a song, and so we put them to use and fill a little bit of water, drop the trays in, and then I'm not top watering. I'm just leaving plants in there for a little bit of time, and then they're regulating themselves. They're preventing some of the evaporation from being shaded, and then also they're blocking the sun from striking most of the water in that pan. So you can use a little bit of water and keep a lot of plants happy. It just requires doing the movement. You have to move them in and out. But we found with the size of our operation, it's a great way to go. Keeps things really happy in the summer. UV light will degrade the plastics. So you want to make sure if you're using plastic tanks, plastic pipes, you want to make sure that you're doing something to protect them. This year, I'm intending on doing some painting on that white pipe. I'd just like to extend the life on that collector pipe. So I'm going to be doing a paint on that. And I put up this slatted shade protector for the western sun, not to just beat down on that westernmost tank. And I also located the tanks themselves kind of in the northern easternmost sort of part of the barn that I could, with this exception of this one western tank. And I braced up the tanks in the middle, and those long runs, you want to brace up those pipes so you don't get like a spot where the water just collects in pools. One thing I've learned as a practice with all of this is that you really want to keep it clean, and you really want to manage what you can, and screen things off. You want to install and use timers. You want to make sure that you're, matching your storage resource to what you're actually going to be utilizing, what you're going to be taking it to and how much water that's going to need. And you want to remember that the average rain year is not going to give you a reliable amount of water. Like this year, it's going to be, unless we get a correction here in the spring, we're going to be low on water for this part of the year. And so you can't always predict the amount of water you're going to get in a year. You can just kind of get in the hang of getting good at kind of adjusting as you go. And you want to make sure in the wintertime that you have a way of moving the water off. Unless you've got a lot of storage, you want to make sure you're moving it off. And so that's why I have an overflow going off into a surface ditch that was there on the side of the building. And the overflow just rolls off to the ground. All right. And that's my presentation.
Thank you so much, Nate. So much good stuff. I know that's really hard to, talk about such a huge thing in a few short minutes. So I'll be excited to have you and Michelle in conversation. If you want to stop sharing your screen, and we'll hand it off to Michelle.
It didn't share, did it? Try
It
again.
didn't, not yet. Let's try it again.
Click, try again.
There we go.
All right. Scroll. Yeah, Nate put a lot of great stuff in there, so I just was rolling with that. I wonder if there's a way I can share. You see it, but I see my notes. Presenter view.
Let's try it.
But then I'm like sharing on Zoom, so I don't always know. Do you see?
Right.
I don't know what you
I just
see.
see yours. I just see your screen, no notes. Or I see the main
Dope.
slide. Yeah.
We're getting real complicated with tech here. Why Hasliquas Isquis Michelle Kinsinai. Hi, good morning. It is still like 10 a.m. over here. My name is Michelle Week. I am the owner and operator of Hosquiat Good Rain Farm, and we're located here in Troutdale, Oregon. And I am Arrow Lakes by way of Colville Confederate Tribes and use she, her pronouns. So my farm is primarily a direct-to-consumer CSA farm, community-supported agriculture. And we have moved our farm multiple times, but this poor little unit, this rain barrel item. It's not quite a rain barrel, rain tub. This giant, it's above ground cistern, technically, has like moved with us. And I actually have a few more that also like get tumbled along as we move around the farm. And we've just landed in Troutdale at our Forever Farm. We're fully initiating a like full-on system for rainwater collection to offset our municipal water, since our property doesn't have water rights and municipal water can add up. And I don't necessarily need to pour potable water out on our fields. Feels like a waste of those efforts, and that seems important to keep for people's drinking water access. But healthy food is also important. So just looking to offset bills, offset resources, and diversify what we have. So I already had this system, and I wanted to just kind of reiterate again, play off of Nate's wonderful presentation of having that like solid flat surface to put your giant tanks on. This one is sitting on like a sandy gravel base. It condenses in there. It's actually an insulated space as well, that we had inherited at one of the 2 properties I had set the system up at. And so that's what it's sitting on. I have like an old above ground pool ladder that I use to like lug myself up there. And I did what Nate does. I bang on it, listen to it, see where the the level's at, or I can unscrew the top and look in. And I probably should have, I bet the floating gauge is like $20 or something silly. I should probably invest in that. And then I wanted to say that, you know, so we're using like a hose. We're using off of the rental owner's property, and we're like offsetting. We have pumps and stuff on their end that I was plugging into their systems and then filling up my cistern, so that we weren't competing and we had better gauge and like can control each other's use and not destruction of property. So for pipe sizing and pump, both of that was designed based off of operating an anchor on drip irrigation. So we worked backwards from what we wanted to irrigate to, later there's a map here of the topography of the first location. We had to go uphill, and we worked our way back. So that's kind of a quick video or image of that. You'll see the tank is covered just like Nate's. It is also a solid color just like Nate's. And those are really key points to keeping like algae, bacteria, and things down, is when you can kind of cover it, cool it, have solid colors so the light's not getting in, stuff's not really gonna grow in there necessarily. In both of our systems too, right, we're draining this annually essentially, and that dry period and that full draining period really helps kind of reset the system and again limit any kind of bacterial, animal, algae growth in there. Let's see. Ugh. Nope. Next. So here's a little bit closer look at our pump. So I don't have a pump in my tank. It's just a singular tank. We had another pump pushing the water through the hose into the tank. And we're using gravity to press the water down and basically prime that tank. There is a ball valve at the base of the tank, and the tank came with a 2-inch hole there already that we just threaded into. That I can not have the water press into the tank, into the pump all of the time, but I would pop that open, give it a few seconds, let it gurgle, slide, prime the pump. Here is it's a cast iron Red Lion pump that I broke the first year I had. In the far back of the red body, there's a big white thick chunk there that connects to the 2-inch oval hose or lay flat hose. And that is the backflow. Since we're pushing the water uphill, the water is going to come back and try to push into the pump, and the pump's designed to go in one direction. So we have the backflow to help keep everything in good working order. There's also that black piece you may not see well in this image that kind of juts out at a 45-degree angle. That's the filter. So when we don't have rainwater from our rental locations or from our new forever home to fill this cistern system, we start pumping through that same hose. We just unhook it at its source and reroute it to a garden hose spigot on the property and start filling it up with municipal water at that point. So all of our irrigation water goes through this pump. So we filter the water here. And then you'll see on the face, we have a gauge, and that gauge tells me the first pressure of just the cistern putting pressure and water into the pump. And if that's way off, it's usually at a pretty consistent number area. I don't remember what the goal was. I couldn't find all my math notes because moving forever farm is a project. But if that was radically off, we knew something was also very wrong in the system. It goes through a gate valve, that is the turn knob there, and I can adjust the pressure going out to the fields and read that second gauge of the pressure leaving the pump. The pump runs on like one solid speed all of the time, so we had to be able to adjust that gate valve so that we don't like balloon and pop our drip irrigation. And then out in the field, there are also PSI regulators as well. You'll see there's a gray box to a bright green cord. That's just an old, it was chewed up on one end from a dog. Power cord that we just spliced in and reused to run that pump. It's a 3/4 horsepower pump. And you know, all the pump manufacturers will give you like flow curve to help you determine size and the PSI, the pressure per square inch flow on that. So ours is a max 43 PSI unit. Let me make sure I covered my notes on this particular one. Right, we can't, the pump always has to be located next door to the cistern there, the tank. I can't locate that pump like 10 feet above.
Michelle, we lost you for a second. Hopefully you will come back. You're frozen. Just give her a moment. I know, we were having such good technology luck there for a moment. I'm sure she'll be back in just a moment. Oh, that's such a bummer. We'll just give it a minute.
Will you be sharing who can help to design systems like this? That's pretty complicated.
I'd say that's something we need to crowdsource from this group here. Yay, Michelle's coming back in.
Okay.
You know, we do have some resources, mostly I'll say from Oregon and a couple from Washington of different folks who can design systems, but welcome back, Michelle. I'm glad you can join us again. We were doing so well with technology.
Yeah, and then my computer blue screened on me. So do you mind running the PowerPoint and I will just do my best off memory to talk about my little notes?
Sure. Teal, do you have that like queued up that you could go through it? That would be super helpful for me.
Yep, I think so.
This is why we've got an awesome team to put it together. Yeah, so I would offer up for people in the room. Michelle, someone was just asking if there's folks who, it looks like quite the engineering feat. If folks know of people doing design, please feel free to enter in the chat and we'll get more into it when we go into the Q&A. But I think there we go, Michelle. Does that look good?
That's great. Yeah. So this was just a funny image. I didn't originally put screens or cover everything up, and this frog and its family were living in our tank. So filters are really important. Screens are really important to help. If you go to the next slide. So there you can see the hose now has like a new, we evicted the frog family, scooped all their eggs out and put this in. So yeah, critters will live in there if you allow them. But by keeping debris out, having that first flush system, and I had mentioned some of the tank specifics there to help reduce like algae growth and animal habitat creation. We all love water. And then I can say that from my research on purchasing the Forever Farm and learning to also be a homeowner at the same time, I was basically advised that there's not much I can do about the gutters themselves on all the structures on reducing the cleaning that they need. You can put like these weird foam inserts in gutters, the leaf guards, other grates, and they might help a little. But like Nate said, you still got to get up there and like clear the leaf litter off, or the water will just hit the leaf litter as a surface and splash right off. So nothing gets you off that ladder and off of cleaning those gutters, kind of no matter what. But I did find that I really like, and I've encouraged lots of people that I've worked with and that I collect rainwater from in the past to put the like downspout leaf filters in, because then they're at your human level and you can just kind of walk around and like pop those leaves off at a better height than having to climb all the way on top of a ladder always. And we can move to the next slide, please. Here is an image of a float valve. So that's the water coming back in. So if in the new location, now that we aren't hooking onto other people's systems, we will have that top manhole on this tank that we're looking down in on this photo. We'll just put a screen on it, and our gutters will be coming at a slant and filling it up directly, really similar to Nate's setup. And we might have a series of tanks like Nate's, and there's ways that you could play with pressure, but also throw in submersible pumps and stuff to push water from one tank to another. So you can kind of chain link them together and fill them all up. So we use these float valves at the top and bottom on the top to prevent overflow, so that I wasn't snagging my landlord's water or wasting municipal water and having it overfill and overflow. So that would cut me off and help keep water in their tanks, or keep just basically kill the water from the municipal source. So we don't have overflow issues that way on the top. But on the bottom, we also ended up adding we kind of like hack job reverse the float valve, so that when the water got too low, it would kill off. It's like a kill switch to the pump. It would kill the pump, turn it off, and turn the system off, so that we didn't run the pump dry and harm it that way. So it was one way we mitigated both overflow and running the pump dry. It's a very bad thing to do. I've experienced in like home well systems. It's expensive to fix. You got to like fish it out of the well. Anyways, don't run pumps dry. So those are the two ways we help mitigate those systems, because it is easy, like Nate said, to like forget that you turn on irrigation, you're hot, you're sweaty, you're tired, you've been running and making all these decisions. So everything we had was on a timer. So there was a timer at the source for municipal water, or from stealing from landlord tanks. We would put timers on, so that we could we weren't all trying to use water all at once, or relocate water and irrigate, right? Like we could coordinate that a little bit better and track usage a little bit better. I also set timers on my phone separate from all these timers so that I still try to like, what it does is it means I then get to audit my system more than be reactive and have emergencies in the system. But water goes fast. And I'm just using like, I think we have some links. They're like Rainbird water things. I've got a bunch from the hardware store or something. You don't always have to get the biggest, fanciest thing, whatever's within your financial means and your immediate means if you're responding to an emergency or just trying to plug and fix something. You know, there's a lot out there that you can just grab and use in the meantime, and they'll work in these systems fine. And I just wanted to say, yeah, this tank is only $13.50. Again, I had to lug it around from place to place and reset up this system. And I wonder if there's one more photo here. We'll go to the next slide. Oh, those are my drawings. We can go back to the drawings. We ended up too in one of the locations, the tank wasn't in a covered area, and that meant the pump was also super exposed. And I had mentioned I broke my pump the first time. So now the pump lives, we found like a plastic doghouse on the side of the road. So the pump lives inside there. We drilled a circular hole in it, and I can stuff it full of stuff in the winter to insulate it. And drain it so that it doesn't break again. And they were really nice and replaced it. But the pump now has its own little pump doghouse to live in. And that was free, cheap, lightweight. It's great. These images were just me scribbling, and there's like a whole page I couldn't find of all the math where we like knew where we were going, and then you mathed back to see what size pump and double check the size of piping and all of that. For us, in the image to the left bottom, the pump was located there. It actually went about 25 feet uphill to the 1 acre fields we were irrigating. So we would go all the way to the peak of the hill and then reroute back down and around because we were having to calculate for the coefficient of friction loss. So water has friction as it goes through the pipes and up the hill. It loses momentum. So we had to make sure the pump was strong enough to get the water up, but not so strong that it would overwhelm the system. And at the very peak, where it splits off for the 2 half-field acres, the PSI regulators were there to further throttle down the water pressure so that we didn't balloon and pop our drip irrigation lines. So one day I'll find all that math. Kind of once you work it all out, it's a set it, forget it system, and you just get into a routine. Let's see, yeah, the next slide was just an image just further talking about our fields that we use mini wobblers, micro sprinklers, and drip irrigation. All your manufacturers will tell you all the statistics on those and PSI and everything you need to know about GPMs, gallons per minute, and all of that. So you just kind of take those numbers and plug them into your calculator. And there are calculators out there already. You don't have to reinvent this math wheel, and it'll like spit out or confirm information for you. For me, right, I cannot collect enough rainwater to get us through a droughty summer. It's not possible with our buildings and Oregon law and all that. We're always going to struggle with water. So we lean heavily on dry farming techniques in knowing our soil type, in building our soil type's capacity for water retention. And just being really familiar when we can kind of combine municipal with rainwater so that we don't drain all the rainwater, which is nice free water, but we also like can even out our bills a little bit more for cash flow, farm businessy stuff. So this is all about having like multiple tools in your toolbox and adjusting through your environment and all your other constraints in setting up a great system that can keep you farming and doing what you do for community, whether that's bringing beautiful flowers and beauty and joy, or meat and livestock, or vegetables, right, or orchards. It's all really helpful and a great way to like supplement and build resilience into your system. That just like makes for a stronger you, stronger community, stronger business, right? Yeah, I think there's lots of links to places you can go and punch in addresses and see your soil type, or is it good for dry farming, or learning about dry farming techniques. Dry farming is really just about low tillage, just like we call it shuffle hoeing. Well, that's what they're called, right? But we call it, that's right, my local soil scientist friend calls it tickle tillage, where we just kind of like scrap up the very tippy tops of the soil to reduce cracks and stuff, and get those competing weeds out without like doing big earth movement. We want to keep all that water retention, microbes deep down. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's it, isn't it?
Oh, good. Yeah, I think you covered it all. And just so folks know, in our slides, we do have this list of resources that both Nate and Michelle helped us start to pull together. And that includes some details on regulations. I know lots of folks had some of those questions. I think we can stop sharing the screen as of now. And we'll be heading into our Q&A piece of things. So if folks want to put any questions that you've got in the chat, that would be great. Like I said, we'll be sharing the recording as well as the PowerPoints with folks afterwards, so you'll have access to those links. Already some good questions and answers have happened in the chat. To kick things off, I'm just curious if you all have any questions for each other after watching the presentations, or things that sort of stood out to you and seeing how your different systems work.
I think she's got
I
a
do.
complicated, she's got a more complicated situation with the water that she has to plumb in, using it in conjunction with the other water sources and stuff. So really kudos to solving all those problems, because there's a lot of technical difficulty that comes with that. Your shutoff valve was, I think, really cool. And I'm really glad that you mentioned the necessity for using the PSI reducers. I'm glad you mentioned that. I'd forgotten that.
Yeah, no, it was great. You covered so much that I was like, what am I going to talk about? But it was a good compare contrast of our systems and like the different hurdles and approaches we needed to take, right?
Yeah.
And
Site
I do see,
specific.
what's that?
Site specific, it's so catered to your situation. There's so many little things you have to accommodate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I have someone in there, I see a question that was asked, like, how did I learn to do all this engineering? And I'll try to find it. We found an old retired person's blog where this person like installed commercial and residential sprinkler systems, but he like posted all his knowledge on this blog, and so we would just poke around reading his blog. And honestly, it was one of the most helpful places we found information. And just, it's not so much that I learned the engineering as once I understood the like math equation, the math problem I was solving, I would just take it and plug and play my bits and bops to it and call it a day. It's like a fake it till you make it. It was so funny because I went to Ernst Irrigation with all of this, and he was like, oh, okay, you got this. You know what you're doing. I was like, I don't kind of know what I'm doing, but like, good to know I made a good system. And the only thing he added was that back flush valve to protect the pump for me. And I can only reiterate to other people that it's both like not as mysterious as it seems, and also, yeah, it takes some technical know-how. You know, you get your plumber's tape, there's special like glues that go with special pipe plastics, and you can't mix and match the two, so you got to like stay consistent and just read labels and make sure they go together. And Home Depot, you know, I just go to Home Depot a lot. But our new rainwater system at Forever Farm, we're using an East Multnomah Soil and Water Conservation CLIP grant. I don't remember what that acronym is, to help do it. And they essentially just ask us to work with I think I plopped it in somewhere, they're basically a contractor who installs rainwater systems. And so though I know like what's going on, I get to just like shuffle this grant on through them, and they're just gonna do it all, and I don't have to think about it again. Because what I needed to know was that my pump and all that pressure gauges worked with my system.
Yeah.
Since I'm good from there out, I'm gonna let the other people you know, you can do all the calculations, but they also do it all too. So
Nice. Thanks, Michelle. Carrie, I see you've got your hand raised. Feel free to come off mute.
Thanks. I'm sorry, I missed the first part of Nate's presentation. So at the point, and I've seen a few different models at the point where the water from the gutter goes into the tank. I've seen some people drill a hole in the top of the tank, and I've seen other people put it in the cap that unscrews and is threaded. Is there an advantage to doing one over the other? Because I'm terrified to drill a hole in my tank right now.
Yeah, I'd had the same reluctance, and I didn't want to drill any holes that weren't already there. And the cap itself had a center that screwed out of it.
Yeah.
So the big lid screws on, and then in the middle there's a part that pops out. And so I just sized it. I sized the pipe outlet to just drop in that. So then when I need to clear my screen, so there's the lid, then underneath you take that lid off, it looks like a pan or like a flat pan that's a screen, and it sits horizontally. And so then you screw that lid on, pipe goes in, and the water drops onto that screen. So when I need to take that pipe out to clear my screen, I didn't want to have to deal with glue. I didn't want to have to seal it in some other way, or, you know, it's got enough flex. I can lift it, unscrew the lid, take it off, pull my tray, wash it, scrub it, do whatever, put it back in, and I'm good for months again.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks,
I
Carrie.
got lucky on my system as far as the height of things coming off of the gutter, then dropping down on those downspouts to come into a collector pipe to then drop into the top of the tank. I did the measurement on the tank before I got it, but then, you know, you always hope that everything goes the way you had measured. And I really didn't have much room to work with. And so I had to keep things as flat as possible. And the people I talked to that were plumbers said, you want to get to flat as fast as you can. And so then, you know, you just flatten it out to horizontal and then just run off of that. So that's something also to keep in mind, is that you want to make it so that you can get off your gutter, get to flat, and then still have a drop to your tank, a little bit of a drop, because all that water will draw, you know, down that way.
It's super helpful. One other thing I've been thinking about a little bit is I know you were looking at costs a little bit, Nate, before the session. I know these can be expensive systems. Michelle mentioned using a grant program. I know that there's lots of county level resource conservation districts that do offer grants across Washington, California, and Oregon. But if you want to talk a little bit more about costs, I think that could be helpful here as well.
Yeah, I think the submersible pump that lives in that tank I think that was $280. It's a pond pump. All the fittings, and, you know, I'm not going to talk about the drip tape because that's kind of, I use that for everything anyway. It's not really just for the rain system. I think I was all in for about, I want to say about $3.5 to $4 grand. Because at that time, these tanks were only costing about $1,000. So now they're 23, or I don't even know what a 2,500 gallon tank is right now. It was like 2,400 bucks the last time I checked. Everything went crazy after COVID with all that stuff. So each of those tanks, I'm glad I got them at that time. They were 1,000. And then all the plumbing, the fittings for the drip stuff that gets you to your system, the gutters themselves I had to buy, and I just bought the ones from, the home center that you just put together and seal the joints, I just cobbled it together. It's all DIY except for the specific rainwater harvest fittings that are kind of special built, and those are kind of expensive. I mean, like the tank gauge, it wasn't 20 bucks, but it was, it was like, maybe it was like 50. And then, the screening outlet was a little bit more, and you kind of add in all these other costs, like the downspout protectors and all that. They all add up. The first flush system. So yeah, I think that's where it landed. But I think now to make the same system, you might be coming in closer to 6.
Michelle, do you have anything to add on funding
I mean,
pieces?
I'm a cobbler. Oh, yeah. Beyond the pump is just the irrigation system, what you're already running off the header or wherever. That could have been steel piping off of that. It could be my lay fat hose, whatever. But up until then, yeah, I think that I know the pump I have, that cast iron one, was probably closer to $400 at the time. It's a pretty expensive pump. And then all the little gauges and things are like, yeah, 50 a pop or something. I don't know what they are now, but that seems about what they were. Yeah, and it's like you're installing a rain gutter system. We're real good at that. Every house, lots of buildings have a system. So it's like essentially where you're starting, and it's just connecting it to the tanks. And making sure your tanks are good, and making sure your pump is the correct size to your activities. That's where a lot of the complication occurs. And the tanks are super expensive. I come from a family of cobblers and maybe hoarders. So I actually got that tank for free, and like adopted it basically, and took it with me, with her without permission. So yeah, and then just a lot of the white PVC pipe going in and out of things though is mostly new, bought from a Home Depot-esque place, hardware stores. And that stuff just adds up. Yeah, just like Nate said, all those little bits of adding it just all adds up.
Yep. And we've got a couple of questions in the chat that I've seen about concerns around, rainwater from asphalt roofing to water crops, and then a little bit, on this like bird poop / avian flu concern. So I'd love to hear what you all have to say about those questions. Michelle, do you want to kick it off?
Sure. What
Yeah,
was
the
that, Nate?
asphalt
Do
piece.
you want to handle the asphalt? I remember you were talking about that.
Yeah, I did a little research. So at Forever Farm, the house is an asphalt composite material. So it sheds the first few years and creates sediment in the system for sure. So the bottom of my tanks will collect sediment, no matter what you do, and no matter how many screens you put in, you'll get a layer of sludge that's really yummy. And that's why they have those big openings at the top. So you shove a 12-year-old down there to like scoop that stuff out and like yoink them back out, right? You gotta find your local middle schooler. They fit in there real easy. And then, the asphalt, as far as I could find, it was 50-50 split on whether or not that carried toxins into the system. And I think mostly you're concerned about sediment, which you're concerned about no matter what. If it's from an ag well, straight from municipalities, whatever, you're always going to get sediment. and sediment in those sprinklers and drip tape systems will plug up holes and stuff and cause issues, right? That's no matter what, you're going to have some concern about sediments, hence all the filtration bops in between. As far as the asphalt composite roofing, you might be concerned about toxins. We're not trying to create potable rainwater systems on our farms. You might for your house, and that is like a $10,000 addition to the rainwater system. That is just very huge to overcome to make it potable, drinkable. And as far as I could tell, no one really had any strong concerns or issues with toxins. And that since you're filtering down into primarily the soil, and then the plants are soaking it back up. And it seems to be a 50-50. So I would say whatever feels comfortable to you, if that feels worthy or not. I will say the consultants would prefer metal roofing, but didn't seem adverse to setting me up on the asphalt house roofing system either, just then the sediment concerns. But metal roofing, any type, that's fine, whether it's painted or not. It's not that big of a concern. It might flake off over time, but like, so does rust, so does bird poop, so does pollen, right? All land on top of those roofs. And again, you're not drinking it, and it's kind of going through this system and filtering through the soil, that it's more or less a non-issue. So I think if that's how like we're thinking of avian flu, I think it's a non-issue. I think you're going to have a half-time life on that virus dying in this whole process before it can actually infect anyone. So I wouldn't be too concerned about it, right? And hopefully everyone's washing and cleaning their kitchens, the food they eat. So
Wash your produce. Yeah.
yeah.
It's not a closed system. And that's part of that's part of the, you can't sterilize something like that. It's not, I mean, these farms, you can't control that you have birds flying over everything all the time. And so that's part of the benefit, I think, of something like a first flush system in this instance. You're going to get that first really dirty pass is going to drop into that tank, and you're going to drop that out the bottom. That can help take like a lot of the initial gunk out. And then, just make sure that like, I'm not doing overhead from that in that instance, on something. And so you're taking it right to the ground. And so, but I don't think that a lot of this stuff, like you said, Michelle, I don't think a lot of this stuff is really concentrated as a problem in that way. It's more of a incidental thing that everyone has to constantly be responsible for making sure that the food that you eat gets washed before you take anything else from it.
Thanks for taking those questions. We're coming up to a close, so I just want to offer up if there's something that you haven't had a chance to say yet that you want to share, or any reflection on how this fits into your bigger systems. I think you both touched on, the piece of rainwater harvesting being part of a bigger diversification and resilience strategy, but just want to offer up this space to kind of leave us on a closing note from each of you. And whoever's ready to speak first, go ahead.
I have a thought after I was thinking about the cost of these systems, and I think with a lot of these things, you have to kind of keep in mind that if you can make a system have a life of, 20, 30 years, then you have to kind of spread the cost over the life of the system. And you really want to think about what's that water really costing you over the 30-year period, right? You're going to make this investment, and then you're going to get this water use. And I think it comes in pretty, it can be pretty affordable, especially if you're building a system that's big enough at the front end that you can actually make good use of it. I think you do get a return on it that way. It gives you a lot of flexibility. I think Michelle was right to talk about resilience and about that it's just a tool in the toolkit. I'm also a dry farmer. I'm part of the Dry Farming Collaborative too. And so I like to think about this as another approach and practice rather than as a sort of silver bullet for water shortage or something. And so it fits into a lot of the things that we do. I think that you can make it as big as you want, and if you have the money to do it at the front end, you could store a lot of water, and you can make it you can make a huge system. I saw a beautiful system out at the Siletz farm, and it's a great one on a great big building. They got a lot of storage capacity there. They use it quite a bit, and so I just think that there are a lot of different ways you can approach this, and it's going to be based on like, what are your resources to work with, and then what's the real benefit at the end that you need to see out of it, and then I think you can see that it can pan out for you.
Thanks, Nate. Any closing thoughts, Michelle? Things that you wish you had said or want to leave folks with?
Yeah, not much. Yeah, I think it's just about having diversity in approaches, and the cost is expensive. I think when we mapped out the cost of getting the grant and because even then I could probably do it cheaper myself, but then I have to do it all. I've got other farming stuff to do. A whole new farm to set up. So going through the grant and just letting them do the more inflated cost of contracting with the LLC who does the installation and everything, it's still like a 10-year ROI or something on what we were doing. And that's it feels forever, like a long time. I think solar similarly, where it takes many years for it to actually return on investment of your input. But having it set up right allows you to pivot better and respond to like sudden droughts and emergencies, and that flexibility, instead of being in an emergency and being like, oh no, what are we gonna do? You can like, I got water, we're good, we'll get through this. It's gonna be tight and it's not fun, but we're not just like down and out. We have options. And I think that's, to me, just reducing my own mental load and stress is sometimes worth the cost. It's just money. And that comes with debt, can come with its own stress load, but also like, I don't know, I make my money from the fields. So either way, I have financial stress. So if I can just reduce like my responding stress and day to day and season to season, that's a plus for me, and being more resilient in that way. Yeah, I basically approach all the farms if we were farming, and then irrigate on top of that. And so some crops we grow are heavy users and are basically irrigated crops. But I treat all the soil as if it was going to dry farm, and that just kind of helps build a system of production and resiliency and health.
Thank you. Thank you so much. If we could take these two off spotlight, that would be helpful for just a moment. And as Teal put into the chat, let's crowdsource some rainwater system resources. Feel free to put your resources in the chat, and feel free to come back on video for a second as we close. We also, again, have evaluations that we would love for folks to fill out. If that link could be put in the chat, that would be really helpful. Thank you so much for taking the time, Michelle and Nate, and getting into the nitty-gritty of the engineering of it, while also taking a step back to show how you integrate it into your dry farming systems and a resilient system. And love seeing how you both are repurposing so many materials and really focused on resilience. It makes such a huge difference. I asked everyone to come back on video so we could give everyone a big round of applause before we head out. And I just want to thank you all for your time. It's great to see all of your faces, and join us for our next water resilience workshop on May 8th that will be getting into Water Rights 101 as best as we can across the different states. Thanks so much. I'll see you all later.
Thank you.